Rajesh Parameswaran presents a story of a failed marriage and being in way over your head. I discuss this and more on today's episode. Welcome back to Around the Weird, a booktube channel where I talk about all the unusual and out of the ordinary literature that I have found in my travels. Today it is Short Story Tuesday, and I want to focus on an interesting short story about pretending to be a doctor. I am referring to The Strange Career of Dr. Raju Gopalarajan, which was published in 2012 in the short story collection I Am an Executioner by Rajesh Parameswaran. For those who don't know, Rajesh Parameswaran is an Indian American writer who has gotten their work published in a number of short story collections or journals, magazines, things like that. And then they only published one thing, or got one thing published so far that I know of, and that is this short story collection, and that's back in 2012. And it doesn't appear that they've gotten anything else published in the 14 years that at the time that I'm talking since then, which is a real tragedy, because this short story collection was really good, and this short story in particular makes me want to read a lot more by this author. So I hope to see more down the road, but it might just be difficult for them to, find publishers or things like that. But that's pretty much all I know about this particular writer. There's not a lot of videos about them online or a lot of information. They don't even have a Wikipedia page. But without further ado, let's talk about the strange career of Dr. Raju Gopalarajan. I will do a summary, a little bit of analysis, and we will move on from there. So the strange career of Dr. Raju Gopalarajan focuses on Gopi Kumar. He is a lifelong slacker, moved from India to America with his wife, but he moves to Texas, I believe. I think this story takes place in Texas, in an Indian kind of sub-community, and he has a job at Comp USA working on computers. He ends up losing that job, but he believes that there is still hope that he can make ends meet for his family. He tells his wife that he's going to sell televisions, but instead what he does is he studies up on how to become a doctor, and then he becomes a fake doctor. He basically forges an entire life and mainly helps people who don't have the means to go to official doctors. And that's pretty weird, and also incredibly funny. A very funny kind of setup for a story. I'm sure it's happened in real life. There are many people who kind of speculate that his wife must have known that this was the case, because she finds all of his notes in a bunch of books that he's checked out from the library, medical books. People say, she could have also been thinking that he might have been thinking about the fact that they couldn't get pregnant for the longest time. So there might be that on her mind. But he has a new confidence. They begin getting a lot of money, which he says is from selling those TVs. And he sees a number of patients, some of whom he's able to help with just, barely doing the bare minimum and not, leading them astray. It's at this time that his wife thinks that she's pregnant. She's not too happy with being married to Gopi. They were in love once, but things have kind of changed. He develops an interest in things and then loses interest, and she was one of those things that he lost interest in. However, we come to find out that she actually has cancer, and she has months to live, if that. While back at the doctor's office, Gopi is making friends with a man named Vicente, who's kind of a laborer, and he doesn't have a lot of money, and he also has a growth on his arm, and that the doctors say would cost too much for him to take off. But Gopi says he'll do it on a cheap, which means he has to do surgery. which he is not trained in actually doing. But Vicente agrees to that. He does surgery and removes the growth and sutures Vicente and sends him on his way, thinking it was successful. Meanwhile, a doctor friend finds out that Gopi has been doing this medical practice under an assumed name so nobody would find him, and she calls him out without directly saying anything, and she recommends that in front of Manju, his wife, that she go see a doctor in case she needs assistance with something serious, which she in fact does. She calls and makes an appointment, and Gopi is trying to figure out why she is coming. In the interim, Vicente shows up again, doing a lot worse. His wound on his arm is festering now after Gopi has removed the growth, and Gopi thinks all he has to do is kind of dig out the blood and kind of fix the problem, but it has seeped in pretty deep. And he, in fact, digs down to the bone. And now Vicente is bleeding everywhere, and he sends Vicente to the nearby hospital. And it's noted that the doctors are going to be calling the police very soon and sending them back to where Gopi is doing surgery at this outlet mall. But finally, Manju shows up and says she needs help and realizes that Gopi has been doing this doctor work the entire time. But from there, the narrator notes we don't really know what goes on inside the doctor's office in between, that point and when the police finally show up. Only the cows really know, because there's cows nearby. But it appears that Gopi operates on Manju, whether or not she lives, if he does the right thing, or if he kills her by accident, or something way else happens. It's left up to the reader's imagination, but that's where the story ends there. In terms of analysis, there is quite a bit worth talking about with this short story. One of the main elements of the story is that of a failing marriage. Rajesh writes about a marriage that maybe has seen better days, although the writer does kind of question if that has actually been the case, because sure, they did love each other, but even at the beginning of their relationship, Manju kind of realized that Gopi was lying about who he was, and he wasn't really a serious kind of person. He was kind of a slacker, but she loved easily, and she just, fell for him, and the rest kind of took place from there. Maybe she hoped that things would get better, but there was never a fire in Gopi that pushed him to become better or to not be anything but a slacker. And so they've kind of fallen out of love, and there's this sense that this new confidence that Gopi has might have fixed things with Manju. He keeps promising her a better life and say, why not a better life for us after all? Maybe there is some hope. And I think Manju kind of tricks herself into believing maybe there is a better life. Maybe she's pregnant. Maybe things can go their way. But at the same time, she's become disillusioned with these promises, and I don't think she really believes what Gopi is selling her anymore. Allow me to read you an interesting quote from this. After he fell asleep, though, Manju would experience an aftertaste of unplaceable resentment. His behavior had the effect, in other words, of sharpening her long-dormant appetite for happiness without satisfying it. She sensed Gopi's newfound sense of purpose, but didn't understand it. And it's just like, you're not really understanding your husband, and although he's offering new promises, the sex and that confidence might make you feel a little bit better, but it's not going to satisfy those emotions that have kind of been laying dormant for a while. Like, he's still the same person, and you're kind of disillusioned of what he's promising. So even though things look like they've changed, they haven't fully changed, and the marriage is still failed, it seems. And in essence, because she has cancer, now she knows that it's over. She's going to die, and there's no sense on working on this anymore. However, when she finds out that he's a doctor, she kind of gives him a chance right there. She's like, can you operate and help me here? And I think what that is for her is she knows that she's dying. It's now or never. The doctors say, it can't be fixed. But maybe Gopi, who has been working as a doctor secretly this entire time, maybe there is still some sort of surprise that he can offer. So he's either going to kill her in an effort to give her surgery, which was, par for the course, why expect better of him? Or maybe there's some surprise he can still offer. And maybe that means that there's hope for their relationship. It's kind of a weird way of thinking of things, but I mean, if you're going to die, what else can you really do? There's also the idea of being in over your head in this story, which I absolutely adore. Even though it's a terrifying series of events and people pretending to be doctors is awful, here, it's fictional. I can enjoy it. Like Gopi here is stuck in an escalating series of events because he refuses to take things seriously and not be the perpetual slacker. He needs money for his family, so he forges a life as a doctor and thinking, I can do that. It might have been a possibility for me early on, but you had to bribe the medical board, and I didn't want that for my father, and also, he failed the exam. But maybe things could be different for him. And so he forges this life, and he becomes responsible for a progressive series of cases, them asking him to do more and more and more, and he thinks that he can handle it. And so he never really stops and questions, am I actually a doctor? Should I be doing this? And so when someone comes to him and says, I need surgery on my arm for this growth, he never questions if he's fully capable of doing that, because he says he's a doctor for women's issues, and this man is talking about his arm that he needs help with. He could very well say, I can't do that. I'll send you on your way. But he is full of confidence and piss and vinegar and other sorts of things. And so he's just set about doing this because, why not? I'm in for a penny. I'm in for a pound. So he ends up hurting Vicente because Vicente has to go to the hospital later on after his wound kind of festers. And then, there's this issue with Manju where she's like, okay, you pretended to be a doctor, cure my cancer, which I believe is ovarian cancer in this story. And I think what the point that Rajesh is trying to make here is, you can bullshit your way out of a lot of things and live a life of bullshitting and being a slacker. But eventually there are some things you can't bullshit your way out of, and you're going to get yourself stuck in a situation that doesn't have an easy solution, which is what Gopi has done in this story. But again, I don't think he is smart enough or savvy enough to realize that he's gotten himself into the situation that he could probably back out. He thinks that he has to do this as a way of kind of proving something to life itself. The last thing I'll note is the interesting narration in the story. It's third-person narration, but it uses the term we quite a bit. Like, our friends know about this. Like, as if it's told from the perspective of Gopi and Manju's friends after the fact, kind of maybe speculating on the series of events. It's like we're witnessing a tragic event unfold. Like, we're told that this did not end well, so now we're watching it, and we're a part of the story, perhaps. Like, maybe we could have stopped this if only we had known. Is it stoppable? Some people might argue that it was unstoppable. But again, if Gopi had been a responsible human being, which he definitely wasn't, maybe he could have stopped it. But because of who these people are, these kinds of events unfolded as they did. It's very interesting narration. I think it really adds to my enjoyment of the story. Anyway, those are my thoughts on the strange career of Dr. Raju Gopalarajan, which is a pretty solid short story, one of the better ones that I've read recently, and I really enjoyed the short story collection. A lot of good short stories to choose from, but I chose this one, so I highly recommend that you go seek this out. You might be able to find it at your local library. It could be out of print, so you might not find it that way, but you should still try to do that. So yeah, I hope Rajesh Parameswaran, writes more in the future, because I would love to see what else he comes up with. But yeah, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Like, share, and subscribe if you have any thoughts on this short story or this author. Otherwise, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe so that more people can find out about both of these things as well, which I think I already just said, so I'm repeating myself there. But until then, I wish you the best of luck in your weird and faking being a doctor travels. Farewell.